Nikolaos, it is interesting that it has the word Nikopers, which is the brightest beams of the light of the sun, as he said. And Laos is Pyglas, so it's like are the brightest beams of the sun.
We're back in Japan again, so we're gonna get to Basho. We've read The Narrow Road, but we wanted to read the records of a weather-exposed skeleton. Quite a name, huh? So this is the first travel sketch. It's like travel during. He writes his travel and he writes a poem. The records of a weather-exposed skeleton, following the example of the ancient priest who is said to have traveled thousands of miles carrying naught for his provisions and attaining the state of sheer ecstasy. Under the pure beams of the moon, I left a broken house on the river Sumita in the August of the first year of Tokyo, among the wails of an autumn wind. Determined to fall, a weather-exposed skeleton. I cannot help the sore wind blowing through my heart. After 10 autumns in Edo, my mind points back to it as my native place. I crossed the barrier gate of Hagoni on a rainy day. All the mountains were deeply buried behind the clouds. In a way, it was fun not to see Mount Fuji in the foggy rain. Poem. In a way, it was fun not to see Mount Fuji in foggy rain. In this journey, I am accompanied by a young man named Chairi, who kindly assumes the position of a servant and renders what help he can for my benefit along the way. He is a man of true affection and trustworthy enough to be called a friend in need. I left my master's house in Fukuokawa. Poem. I left my master's house in Fukuokawa, leaving its basho tree in the care of Mount Fuji. Written by Curry. I was plodding along the river Fuji. I saw a small child, hardly 3 years old, crying pitifully on the bank. Obviously abandoned by his parents, he must have thought this child was unable to ride through the stormy waters of life, which run as wild as the rapid river itself, and that he was destined to have a life even shorter than that of the morning dew. The child looked at me as fragile as the flowers of bush clover that scatter in the slightest stir of the autumn wind. It was so pitiful that I gave him what little food I had with me. The ancient poet poem, the ancient poet who pitied monkeys for their cries, what would he say if he saw this child crying in the autumn wind? It is indeed that this child has been reduced to the state of utter misery. How is it indeed? Is it because of his mother who ignored him, or because of his father who abandoned him? Alas, it seems to me that this child's undeserved suffering has been caused by something far greater and more massive, by what one might call the irresistible will of heaven. If it is so, child, you must raise your voice to heaven, and I must pass on, leaving you behind. The day I wanted to cross the river Oi, it rained from morning till night, and I was held up by the swollen river. Written by Churi. Poem. A long rainy day of autumn, my friends in Edo are counting the days, thinking of us at the river Oi. The scene before my eyes. Poem. Roses of Sharon at the roadside, perishing one after another in the mouth of a horse. I traveled a few miles on horseback, half asleep, with my whip swinging by my side exactly in the manner of the Chinese poet Toboku. When the aged moon faintly hanging in the sky while the foot of the mountains was dark as a howl. It was a bit too early even for the first cockcrow, but my dreams were suddenly interrupted when my horse came to the steep precipice of Meio no Nakayama. Half asleep on horseback, I saw, as if in a dream, a distant moon and a line of smoke from the morning tea. Poem again. Half asleep on horseback, I saw, as if in a dream, a distant moon and a line of smoke from the morning tea. I went down to Ise, where I spent 10 days with a friend named Fubaku. We visited the outer shrine of Ise one evening just before dark. The first gate of the shrine was standing in the shadow, and the lights were glimmering in the background. As I stood there, lending my ears to the roar of pines on distant mountains, I felt moved deep in the bottom of my heart. The utter darkness of a moonlit poem in the utter darkness of a moonless night. A powerful wind embraces the ancient cedar trees. I did not wear a single piece of metal on my belt, nor do I carry anything but a sack on my shoulder. My head is clean shaven, and I have a string of pearls in my hand. I am indeed dressed like a priest, but a priest I am not, for the dust of the world still clings to me. The keeper of the inner shrine prevented me from entering the holy seat of the god because my appearance was like a Buddhist priest. At the bottom of the valley where the ancient poet Segyo is said to have entered his hermitage, there was a stream, and a woman was washing potatoes. Poem. The poet Segyo would have written a poem even for the woman washing potatoes. Towards the end of the day, I stopped at a small tea house where a young woman named Butterfly handed me a small piece of and asked me to write a poem choosing her name as a subject. Poem. A butterfly poised on a tender orchid. How sweetly the incense burns on its wings. I visited a poet at his hermitage. Poem. An ivy spray trained up over the wall, and a few bamboos inviting a tempest. At last I reached my native village in the beginning of September, but I could not find a single trace of the herbs my mother used to grow in front of her. The herbs must have been completely bitten away by the frost. Nothing remained the same in my native village. Even the faces of my brothers had wrinkles and white hair, and we rejoiced to see each other alive. My eldest brother took out a small omelet bag and said to me as he opened it, "See your mother's frosty hair. You are like Urashima, whose hair has turned white upon his opening a miracle box. Remaining in tears for a few moments, I wrote, should I hold them in my hand? They will disappear in the warmth of my tears, icy strings of frost. Crossing over the country of Yamato, we came to a village called province of Katsu. Companion Kuri was born. We spent several days resting our tired feet. There was a house deeply buried in a bamboo thicket. Poem. Sweet as a lute falls on my ears the plucking of a cotton bow in a recess. Pine tree, probably over 1,000 futagami. The trunk was large enough. As I stood in front of this tree, I felt a strange sense of awe and respect, for